The morning alarm buzzed at exactly 5:30, just like it had every day for the past 15 years. Ha-Young Kim rolled out of her narrow bed in the maintenance worker housing block and walked to the small window. Outside, the twin suns of Kepler 442b cast long purple shadows across New Seoul Colony. The sight should have been beautiful, but Ha-Young barely noticed anymore. She pulled on her gray work uniform and grabbed her toolkit from the shelf. The magnetic boots clicked softly as she walked down the empty corridors of Level 7, the deepest part of the colony where only maintenance workers and automated systems lived. This was exactly how she liked it: quiet, invisible, safe. Ha-Young had chosen the night shift 15 years ago for a reason. While 30,000 colonists slept above her, she fixed the machines that kept them alive, the atmospheric processors that cleaned their air, the gravity generators that kept their feet on the ground, the shield arrays that protected them from cosmic radiation, important work that no one wanted to think about. Her first stop was Processing Unit 12, which had been acting strange for 3 days. The readouts showed normal operation, but Ha-Young could feel something was wrong. She had always been good with machines, better than most people realized. Too good sometimes. She opened the maintenance panel and immediately saw the problem. 3 circuit boards had developed hairline cracks, probably from thermal stress. Easy to fix, but the timing was odd. These boards were designed to last 50 years, and they were only 20 years old. She made notes on her tablet and began replacing them. The work was peaceful. Ha-Young liked working with her hands. Machines were honest. They broke in predictable ways and stayed fixed once you repaired them properly. Unlike people who could lie and change and hurt you when you least expected it, her communicator chirped. "Kim Ha-Young, report to Supervisor Park immediately." Ha-Young frowned. She almost never got called to see Dong-Ho Park during shift hours. She finished connecting the last circuit board and headed to the supervisor office on Level 6. Dong-Ho Park was a large man with kind eyes and graying hair. He had been her supervisor for 8 years and never asked too many questions about her past. Ha-Young respected that about him. "Sit down, Ha-Young," he said, gesturing to a chair. "I have a special assignment for you." Ha-Young tensed. She did not like special assignments. Special assignments meant visibility. Visibility meant questions. Questions meant danger. "What kind of assignment?" she asked carefully. "Central hub maintenance. The main computer core has been having power fluctuations for the past week. Administrator Yoon specifically requested our best technician." Dong-Ho smiled. "That would be you." Ha-Young shook her head immediately. "Send someone else. I work the deep levels. That is my job. Ha-Young, you are the only person who understands those old fusion control systems. The hub runs on the same technology as the Level 7 processors. If that computer core fails, the whole colony loses life support. The central hub was the worst possible place for someone trying to stay hidden. It was the administrative heart of New Seoul Colony, full of officials and security cameras and curious people who might recognize her face from old military records. But if the main computer failed, 30,000 people would die. "How long?" she asked. "Probably 3 days, maybe 4. Ha-Young closed her eyes. She had managed to avoid the upper levels for 15 years, but she could not let innocent people die because she was afraid. "I will do it," she said quietly. 2 hours later, Ha-Young stood in the central hub maintenance area, studying diagnostic reports on a tablet. The computer core was massive, filling an entire room with humming processors and cooling systems. The technology was 40 years old, but still reliable. Usually, the power fluctuations were definitely real. Random spikes and drops that made no sense. Ha-Young opened the main access panel and began tracing power lines with her scanner. Everything looked normal, but she could sense something wrong in the electrical patterns. Like a whisper she could not quite hear. "Excuse me, are you the maintenance specialist?" Ha-Young turned to see a young woman in an administrator uniform. She was pretty, with short black hair and intelligent eyes. Her name tag read Assistant Administrator Bo-Ram Choi. "Yes," Ha-Young said simply. "I am Bo-Ram Choi. Administrator Yoon asked me to help with anything you need." Bo-Ram smiled warmly. "This is my first week in Central Hub. Still learning where everything is." Ha-Young nodded and returned to her work. She did not like conversation with strangers, but Bo-Ram seemed friendly enough. More importantly, she seemed willing to let Ha-Young work in peace. For 3 hours, Ha-Young traced circuits and tested components. The scanner readings were all normal, But her instincts told her the problem was deeper than simple equipment failure. She had learned to trust those instincts even when she could not explain them. At noon, Boram brought her coffee and a sandwich. "Any luck finding the problem?" "Not yet. The readings are normal, but something is definitely wrong. Maybe it is external interference," Boram suggested. "Solar flares or cosmic radiation?" Hyung paused. That was actually a good thought. She pulled up the colony sensor logs on her tablet and scrolled through recent data. Solar activity was normal. Cosmic radiation levels were typical. But there was something else. "Boram, look at this." Hyung pointed at a section of the sensor data. "These are deep space monitoring stations. They track incoming ships and debris." Boram leaned closer to look at the screen. Hyung noticed she smelled like flowers and electronics. An odd combination, but not unpleasant. "I do not see anything unusual," Boram said. "Look at the timestamp. 3 days ago, the outer sensors detected something at the edge of the system. Then nothing. Like it just disappeared. Equipment malfunction?" Hyung shook her head. "All 6 outer stations detected the same thing at the same time. Then all 6 lost contact simultaneously." A cold feeling settled in Hyung's stomach. She knew that sensor pattern. She had seen it before 12 years ago, during her previous life. The life she had tried so hard to forget. Ships could not just disappear from sensors, not unless they had stealth technology far beyond human capabilities. And Hyung knew of only one race that possessed such technology, the Keth Empire. She stood up quickly, her heart beginning to race. "Boram, I need to see Administrator Yoon immediately." "Is something wrong?" Hyung looked at Boram's kind face and felt a stab of fear. Not for herself, but for this young woman and the 30,000 other innocent people living their quiet lives in New Seoul Colony. "Maybe," Hyung said. "I hope I am wrong." But as she gathered her tools and headed toward Administrator Yoon's office, Hyung could feel something stirring deep inside her mind. Something she had spent 15 years trying to keep buried, something that recognized the approaching danger and wanted to respond. Her power was waking up, and that terrified her more than any alien threat ever could. Administrator Jinwoo Yoon was a thin man with nervous hands and tired eyes. His office overlooked the main plaza of New Seoul Colony, where families were enjoying their evening meal under the artificial stars. Hyung stood by his desk watching him read her report about the sensor data. "This could be anything," Jinwoo said finally. "Space debris, solar interference, equipment failure. 6 stations do not fail at the same time," Hyung replied. "Not like this." Jinwoo looked at her carefully. "You seem very certain about this, Miss Kim. Do you have experience with deep space monitoring?" Hyung felt her chest tighten. This was the kind of question she had been avoiding for 15 years. "I read the technical manuals. The pattern is wrong." "I see." Jinwoo set down the report. "Well, I will send a message to Earth Command. They can decide if this needs investigation." Hyung nodded and left the office, but she knew it was already too late. If Keth ships were in the system, they would not wait for Earth Command to respond. They would strike when they were ready. She walked back to level 7, her mind racing. Memories she had tried to bury were pushing to the surface. Memories of another time, another life, when she was not Hyung Kim, the maintenance worker, when she was Lieutenant Commander Kim Hyung of the Terran Defense Corps. In her small apartment, Hyung sat on her bed and opened a hidden panel in the wall. Inside was a metal box she had not touched in 12 years. Her hands shook as she entered the security code. The box contained her old military identification, some photographs, and a data crystal with her final mission report. The report that ended her career and started her life in hiding. Hyung held the data crystal and let the memories come. 12 years ago, she had been part of humanity's first contact with an alien race. Not the peaceful meeting everyone had hoped for. The Keth Empire had attacked without warning, destroying 3 human colonies and taking thousands of prisoners. The Terran Defense Corps had created a special unit to fight the Keth. The Voidwalker team. 12 soldiers with experimental neural implants that were supposed to make them immune to Keth mind control weapons. Hyung had volunteered for the program because she wanted to protect humanity. She did not know that the implants would change her in ways no one had expected. The mission had been simple. Infiltrate a Keth command ship and rescue human prisoners. Intelligence said the ship carried 500 captives from the destroyed colonies, But the intelligence was wrong. Ha-Young closed her eyes and remembered the moment everything changed. Her team had successfully boarded the Keth ship. They were moving through the corridors when the mind control attack began. Keth mental weapons were like ice picks in the brain. They took control of human thoughts and turned people into puppets. The neural implants were supposed to block these attacks. For 11 members of the Void Walker team, the implants failed. Ha-Young watched in horror as her teammates turned their weapons on each other. Their faces were blank, their eyes empty. The Keth had taken control of their minds completely, but Ha-Young was different. The mind control attack hit her like a wall of freezing water. But instead of breaking through her defenses, it seemed to wake something up inside her brain. Something that had been sleeping. Power exploded from her mind, not the gentle telepathy that scientists had theorized about. This was something raw and terrible. Her consciousness expanded like a nuclear explosion, burning through the Keth mental attack and reaching out to touch every mind on the ship. She felt the Keth soldiers first. Their minds were cold and sharp like broken glass. They were trying to control her teammates, pouring their will into human brains. Ha-Young pushed back. The sensation was impossible to describe. She reached into the Keth minds and showed them what fear felt like. She made them experience every moment of terror their prisoners had felt. Every scream, every tear, every prayer for help that had gone unanswered. The Keth soldiers began dropping to the floor, their minds overloaded by emotions they had never learned to process. But Ha-Young could not stop. The power kept growing, spreading through the ship like wildfire. She felt the minds of 500 human prisoners, broken and hopeless after months of captivity. Without thinking, she touched their consciousness and gave them strength. She felt her 11 teammates trapped in their own bodies by Keth mind control. She burned the alien influence out of their brains and set them free. But the effort was too much. Ha-Young collapsed on the deck of the Keith ship as her power finally exhausted itself. When she woke up 3 days later in a military hospital, Admiral Lee Taemin was sitting by her bed. "What happened on that ship?" he asked quietly. Ha-Young told him the truth, how her mind had reached out and touched hundreds of other minds, how she had broken the Keth mental attack and freed the prisoners, how her teammates had died anyway because their brains could not handle being controlled, and then freed so violently. Admiral Lee listened without speaking. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "The official report will say that the Keth withdrew due to equipment failure," he said finally. "Your teammates died heroically in the rescue mission. You are the sole survivor. What about the truth? The truth is too dangerous. If people knew what you could do, they would either worship you or fear you. Neither would be good for you or for humanity." Admiral Lee helped her disappear. New identity, new life, new home on a distant colony where no one would ask questions. Ha-Young put the data crystal back in the box and sealed it away. But she could not seal away the growing certainty that her peaceful life was about to end. Over the next 2 days, the power fluctuations in the central hub got worse. Computers crashed randomly. Communication systems failed for minutes at a time. The environmental controls kept adjusting themselves without commands. Boram found Ha-Young working late on the 3rd night, trying to trace the source of the problems. "Any progress?" Boram asked, bringing her usual coffee and sandwich. "No. The failures are getting worse, but I cannot find the cause." Ha-Young accepted the coffee gratefully. It is almost like the systems are responding to something external. What kind of external signal? Ha-Young hesitated. The truth was that the computers were responding to her. Every time she got stressed or worried, electronic systems around her began acting strangely. It had started happening right after she discovered the sensor data about ships at the edge of the system. Her power was waking up, just like it had 12 years ago. "I do not know," she lied, but as she spoke, every screen in the central hub flickered once, as if the computers themselves disagreed with her words. Ha-Young was deep in the maintenance tunnels when the attack began. She had been working on a faulty power relay when every light in the colony suddenly went red. Emergency sirens started wailing throughout New Seoul. The colony-wide communication system crackled to life. Administrator Yoon's voice was tight with fear. "All citizens report to designated shelter areas immediately. This is not a drill. Unknown vessels have entered our system and are jamming all communications. Military personnel report to defense stations." Ha-Young dropped her tools and ran toward the nearest access ladder. Her heart was pounding as she climbed up through the levels toward the surface. She had to get to the central hub and help coordinate the colony's defenses. But when she reached level 3, she found something wrong. People were walking through the corridors like sleepwalkers. Their eyes were open but empty. They moved slowly without purpose, bumping into walls and each other. A woman walked past Ha-Young carrying her crying baby, but she did not seem to hear the child's screams. Ha-Young grabbed the woman's shoulder. "What is wrong? Where are you going?" The woman looked at Ha-Young with blank eyes. Her voice was flat and emotionless. "We must go to the landing bays. The masters are calling us, masters." Ha-Young felt ice in her stomach. She knew that word. The Keth made their human slaves call them masters. The neural suppression field was already working. Ha-Young ran up the remaining levels to the surface. The colony's main plaza was filled with people walking in the same slow, empty way. Men and women and children all moving toward the landing bays where Keth shuttles would be waiting to take them away. But Ha-Young could think clearly. Her mind was sharp and focused, just like it had been 12 years ago on the Keth command ship. Her buried power was protecting her. She tried to reach the central hub, but Keth soldiers were already guarding the important buildings. They wore black armor and carried energy weapons that could kill a human instantly. Their faces were hidden behind masks that looked like insect heads. Ha-Young hid behind a food vendor's stall and watched the aliens work. They were efficient and calm, separating humans into groups. Adults went to one area, children to another. Anyone who looked like they might be useful went to a third group. The Keth had done this before. Many times, a small group of humans was still fighting. Ha-Young could see them barricaded inside the communications building, firing old hunting rifles at the Keth soldiers. But their weapons barely scratched the alien armor. One of the defenders was Bo-Ram. Ha-Young could see her through a broken window, trying to repair a damaged radio. Her pretty face was dirty and scared, but her hands were steady as she worked with the electronics. A Keth soldier threw a stun grenade through the window. Bo-Ram and the other defenders collapsed immediately, their bodies jerking as electrical current overloaded their nervous systems. The Keth soldiers moved in to capture them. Ha-Young closed her eyes and felt the power stirring deep in her mind. She had tried so hard to keep it buried, but watching innocent people get hurt was breaking down all her careful control. Without thinking, she reached out with her consciousness toward the nearest Keth soldier. His mind felt like cold metal and sharp edges. Alien thoughts moved in patterns she could barely understand. But underneath the strangeness, she could sense his emotions. Pride in his efficiency, contempt for the weak humans, satisfaction at completing another successful raid. Ha-Young pushed harder. The Keth soldier suddenly stopped walking. His weapon fell from his hands and clattered on the ground. He stood completely still for 10 seconds, then collapsed. The other soldiers noticed immediately. They started speaking to each other in their clicking, hissing language. Ha-Young did not understand the words, but she could feel their confusion and growing alarm. They knew something was interfering with their operations. Ha-Young pulled her consciousness back and ran toward the communications building. She had to get Bo-Ram and the others to safety before the Keth figured out what was happening. But she was too late. A tall Keth in elaborate armor was already inside the building, examining the unconscious humans. This one was different from the soldiers. His armor had gold markings and his mask looked more like a skull than an insect. A commander. The Keth commander looked up as Ha-Young approached the building. Even through his mask, she could feel his attention focus on her like a laser beam. He spoke in accented but clear human language. "You are the anomaly, the one causing the neural interference." Ha-Young stopped walking. There was no point in pretending anymore. "Let them go. Your fight is with me, not them." The Keth commander tilted his head. "Interesting. You speak like a soldier, but our intelligence shows no military presence on this colony." He stepped closer to her. "What are you?" "Someone who has fought your kind before." "Impossible. Humans cannot resist our neural suppression technology." Ha-Young smiled grimly. "Most humans cannot." The commander's posture changed. He suddenly seemed more alert, more dangerous. "You are the ghost from the Voidwalker incident, the one who killed 300 of our warriors. I defended innocent people, just like I will do now." The Keth commander made a gesture and 6 soldiers surrounded Ha-Young. Their weapons were pointed at her, but they did not fire. They wanted to capture her alive. "You will come with us," the commander said. The High Command has many questions about your abilities. Ha Young looked at Bo-Ram's unconscious form lying on the floor of the communications building. The young woman had been kind to her, had brought her coffee and sandwiches, had tried to help save the colony. All her life, Ha Young had tried to avoid using her power. She had been afraid of what it might do to other people, afraid of becoming a monster, but sometimes monsters were exactly what the situation required. I have a better idea, Ha Young said quietly. She closed her eyes and let the barriers in her mind collapse completely. Power exploded outward from her consciousness like a wave of invisible fire. It crashed into the minds of the 6 Keth soldiers surrounding her. They screamed and fell to the ground, their weapons scattered around them. The Keth commander staggered but remained standing. His mental defenses were stronger than his soldiers. "What are you?" he whispered. Ha Young opened her eyes. They were glowing with soft blue light. "I am what happens when you push humanity too far," she said. Every piece of electronic equipment in a 50-meter radius suddenly exploded in showers of sparks. The Keth commander stepped back as sparks rained down from the destroyed electronics. His soldiers were writhing on the ground, their minds overloaded by Ha Young's psychic assault. But he was still standing, still dangerous. "Commander Vex Thule of the Keth Third Fleet," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "I will remember your face, human. When I return with proper weapons, you will not escape again." He activated a device on his wrist and disappeared in a shimmer of light. Personal teleporter. Ha Young cursed under her breath. She had let him get away. The unconscious humans in the communications building were starting to wake up. Bo-Ram opened her eyes first, looking confused and frightened. "What happened?" she asked, sitting up slowly. "The last thing I remember was working on the radio, then everything went white." "Keth stun weapons," Ha Young said, helping her to her feet. "How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by lightning." Bo-Ram looked around at the destroyed equipment and the unconscious Keth soldiers. "Did you do all this?" Ha Young nodded. There was no point in lying anymore. "We need to move. More soldiers will come soon." The other defenders were waking up now. Dong-Ho Park was among them, his maintenance uniform torn and bloody. He stared at Ha Young with wide eyes. "Ha Young, how did you fight them? Those weapons should have knocked you out instantly." "It is complicated," Ha Young said. "Right now we need to get everyone to safety." But Bo-Ram was staring at her with a strange expression. "You are not just a maintenance worker, are you?" Before Ha Young could answer, the ground shook. Through the broken windows, they could see 3 massive Keith warships descending toward the colony. Each ship was the size of a city block covered in weapons and armor plating. "They are bringing reinforcements," one of the defenders whispered. Ha Young closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. She could sense hundreds of Keth soldiers on those ships, along with something else, something that made her power recoil in pain. Nullification technology. Weapons designed specifically to counter psychic abilities. The Keth had come prepared for her this time. "We cannot fight them in the open," Ha Young said. "Everyone needs to get to the underground levels. The maintenance tunnels run throughout the colony. We can move without being detected." "What about the other colonists?" Bo-Ram asked. "There are 30,000 people up there." Ha Young looked out at the plaza where thousands of colonists were still walking slowly toward the landing bays. The neural suppression field kept them calm and obedient, but it also protected them from panic and fear. "The Keth want them alive," she said. "Slaves are valuable. They will not hurt anyone who cooperates." "But they will hurt anyone who fights back," Dong-Ho said grimly. Ha Young nodded. "That is why we have to be smart about this." They made their way through the maintenance tunnels to level 7, where Ha Young had lived for 15 years. The deep levels were untouched by the Keth invasion. Down here, the emergency lighting cast red shadows on the metal walls. Bo-Ram sat on a crate and looked at Ha Young carefully. "You knew this was going to happen. That is why you were so worried about the sensor readings." "I suspected," Ha Young admitted. "And you know how to fight them. Really fight them, not just hide and run." Ha Young was quiet for a long moment. Then she told them the truth. About her real identity, about the Voidwalker mission 12 years ago, about the power that had awakened inside her mind and destroyed an entire Keth battle group. When she finished, the maintenance tunnel was completely silent. Dong-Ho spoke first. "You have been fixing our air recyclers for 8 years. You brought me soup when I was sick last winter. You helped my daughter with her school science project." "Yes." But you are also some kind of super soldier who can destroy alien warships with her mind. Yes. Dong-ho rubbed his forehead. This is a lot to process. Bo-ram was staring at Ha-young with fascination rather than fear. Can you teach others to do what you do? No. The neural implants that gave me these abilities killed everyone else who received them. I am the only one who survived. So you are the only person who can fight the Keth on equal terms. Ha-young shook her head. Not equal. They have nullification technology now, weapons that can disrupt psychic abilities. I felt them on the ships. But you still have to try, Bo-ram said quietly. Those are our friends and families being loaded onto Keth slave ships. Our children. Ha-young looked at the faces around her. These people had accepted her as one of them for 15 years. They had never asked questions about her past or demanded explanations for her strange behavior. They had simply let her be part of their community. Now they needed her to be something more. The Keth command ship will be heavily shielded, she said. I cannot reach it from down here. I would have to get inside. How? Dong-ho asked. Ha-young smiled grimly. The same way I did 12 years ago. I walk in the front door. 2 hours later, Ha-young stood at the entrance to Landing Bay 7. Above her, the massive Keth command ship blocked out the artificial stars. Hundreds of human prisoners were being marched up ramps into cargo holds. She had changed out of her maintenance uniform and into the black tactical gear she had hidden in her apartment for 15 years. The outfit still fit perfectly, though it felt strange after so many years of gray coveralls. Bo-ram and Dong-ho were hidden in the maintenance tunnels with the other survivors, monitoring Keth communications through a jury-rigged radio system. They would guide her through the ship and help her find the prisoners. Ha-young walked calmly toward the nearest Keth guard post. The soldiers saw her coming but did not raise their weapons. She was just one human among thousands. They realized their mistake too late. Ha-young reached out with her mind and touched the consciousness of the 6 guards simultaneously. She did not attack them violently this time. Instead, she simply made them forget she existed. They continued standing at their posts, staring right through her as she walked past. The Keth ship was exactly like the one she had infiltrated 12 years ago. Cold metal corridors filled with the smell of ozone and alien machinery. She moved through the passages like a ghost, using her abilities to stay invisible to guards and security systems. But as she went deeper into the ship, she began to feel the nullification field pressing against her mind. It was subtle at first, like a headache building slowly, but with each step the pressure increased. The Keth were learning to adapt to her abilities. Ha-young found the prison hold in the center of the ship. Thousands of colonists were packed into metal cages, still under the influence of the neural suppression field. They sat quietly, waiting for whatever their captors planned to do with them. In one cage, she saw families with small children. In another, elderly people who could barely stand. The Keth had taken everyone, regardless of age or health. That was when Ha-young truly understood what she had to do. These people had given her a home when she needed one. They had never asked her to be a hero, but sometimes being human meant making the hard choice anyway. She closed her eyes and reached out with her full power. Nullification field or no nullification field. The psychic wave that erupted from her mind was stronger than anything she had ever created before. The psychic wave exploded from Ha-young's mind like invisible lightning. Every Keth soldier in the command ship suddenly stopped moving. Their weapons clattered to the floor as they grabbed their heads and screamed. But the nullification field pushed back immediately. Ha-young felt like ice picks were being driven into her brain. The alien technology was designed to cause pain when anyone tried to use psychic abilities. She gritted her teeth and pushed harder. The metal cages holding the human prisoners began to bend and warp. The locks snapped open with loud cracks. Thousands of colonists blinked and looked around in confusion as the neural suppression field flickered and died. "Everyone out," Ha-young shouted. "Get to the escape pods, now!" The colonists stumbled out of their cages, still dazed but moving. Parents grabbed their children. Elderly people helped each other walk. They had no idea who Ha-young was or how she had freed them, but they could sense the urgency in her voice. Commander Vex Thul's voice echoed through the ship speakers. "Activate emergency nullification protocols. Maximum power. Kill the human psychic before she destroys the ship." The nullification field suddenly tripled in strength. Ha-young fell to her knees as agony tore through her mind. It felt like her brain was being dissolved in acid, but she could not stop now. Too many people depended on her. Through the ship's viewports, she could see something that made her heart sink. More ships were arriving in the new Sol system. But these were not Keth vessels, human warships with the blue and silver colors of the Terran Defense Corps. Young recognized the lead ship immediately. The TDS Horizon, flagship of the Fifth Fleet, Admiral Lee Taman's personal command vessel. Her old life had finally caught up with her. Boram's voice crackled through her hidden communicator. Young, can you hear me? Human ships just jumped into the system. They are demanding that the Keth surrender all prisoners immediately. It is Admiral Lee, Young gasped, still fighting against the nullification field. He is here for me, not the colonists. What do you mean? But before Young could answer, the Keth command ship shook violently. Through the metal walls she could hear the whine of energy weapons and the thunder of explosions. The Terran fleet was attacking. Commander Vex Thule appeared in the prison hold, his skull-like mask cracked from Young's earlier psychic assault. Behind him marched a dozen Keth soldiers carrying strange weapons that hummed with electrical energy. End this now, human, he said. Surrender yourself and we will release half the prisoners. Young struggled to her feet, her head still pounding from the nullification field. You will release all of them. Impossible. We need slaves for the mining worlds, but I am willing to negotiate. I have a better offer. Young smiled despite the pain. You leave this system immediately and I let you live. Vex Thule laughed, a harsh clicking sound. You can barely stand. Our nullification technology is destroying your mind piece by piece. What can you possibly do to threaten us? Young closed her eyes and reached out with her consciousness, not toward the Keth, but toward the human ships outside. Admiral Lee Taman was exactly where she expected him to be. On the bridge of the horizon, studying tactical displays and giving orders to his fleet commanders. His mind felt familiar, like an old song she had not heard in years. She touched his consciousness gently. Lee, she projected. It is Young. I am on the Keth command ship. The Admiral's thoughts were filled with surprise and relief. Young, thank God you're alive. We have been searching for you for 3 days. Our deep space monitors detected massive psychic activity in this system. I am trying to rescue the colonists, but the Keth have nullification technology. I cannot fight them much longer. Hold on. We are coming. But Young could feel something else in Admiral Lee's mind, something that made her stomach turn cold. He was not just here to rescue her. He had other orders, secret orders from Earth Command. They wanted to capture her and bring her back for study. The politicians and generals had decided that her abilities were too valuable to waste on a distant colony, even if it meant sacrificing 30,000 innocent people. The Keth command ship shook again as Terran missiles struck its shields. But Vex Thule seemed unconcerned. He raised one of the electrical weapons and pointed it at a group of human children cowering near the broken cages. Your human friends are attacking us, he said. Perhaps they need motivation to stop. Should I start killing prisoners? Young felt rage building inside her chest. These aliens had invaded her home, threatened her friends, turned innocent people into slaves, and now they wanted to murder children to make a point. She had spent 15 years trying to control her power, trying to be gentle and careful and human, but sometimes being human meant unleashing the monster inside. Young stopped fighting the nullification field and embraced it instead. She let the alien technology pour pain into her mind while she reached out with her consciousness toward every electronic system on the ship. The Keth had designed their nullification field to cause agony when humans tried to use psychic abilities. But they had made one crucial mistake. They assumed that pain would make humans weaker. They did not understand that pain could also make humans angry, and angry humans were the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Young's power exploded outward with the force of a nuclear bomb. Every computer system on the Keth ship began overloading simultaneously. The artificial gravity failed. The lights went out. Life support systems crashed, but she was not done. Her consciousness reached through space toward the other 2 Keth warships. She found their main computers and began tearing through their programming like a hurricane through a paper house. The ships started firing their weapons randomly. At empty space. At each other. At their own support vessels. Admiral Lee's voice filled her mind. Young, what are you doing? You are destroying everything in the system. Protecting my home, she replied. The nullification field was still active, still causing terrible pain. But Ha-Young had learned something important. Pain was just another kind of energy, and energy could be redirected. She gathered all the agony the alien technology was pouring into her brain and sent it back toward Commander Vex Thule. The Keth commander screamed and collapsed. His soldiers dropped their weapons and fell writhing to the floor. But the effort was too much. Ha-Young could feel her mind starting to burn out from the strain. The nullification field was designed to destroy human psychic abilities permanently. She had maybe minutes before her power was gone forever. Time enough to save the colonists, but probably not time enough to save herself. Ha-Young could feel her mind burning away like paper in a fire. The nullification field was winning. Each second that passed stripped away more of her psychic abilities. Soon there would be nothing left but the pain. But the colonists were almost free. Thousands of people were running through the corridors of the Keth ship toward the escape pods. Parents carried children. Strong people helped the weak. They moved together like a river of humanity flowing toward safety. Commander Vex Thule struggled to his feet, his skull mask completely cracked now. Black blood dripped from underneath it. You are destroying yourself for nothing, human. Even if these slaves escape, more ships will come. The Keth Empire has millions of warriors. Then millions of warriors will learn what happens when they threaten innocent people. Ha-Young gasped. Through the ship's damaged viewports, she could see the space battle raging outside. Terran and Keth vessels traded massive energy blasts while smaller fighters danced between them like angry insects. But both sides were holding back, afraid to hit the command ship while prisoners were still aboard. Admiral Lee's voice filled her mind again. Ha-Young, you need to stop this. The nullification field is killing you. Come back to my ship and let our medical team help you. I cannot leave, she replied. Too many people still need to get out. The colonists are not your responsibility anymore. Earth Command has classified you as a strategic resource. You belong to humanity as a whole, not to one small colony. Ha-Young felt a flash of bitter anger. Strategic resource. That was how the politicians saw her. Not as a person with her own choices, but as a weapon to be used when convenient. I belong to myself, she told the Admiral. And I choose to protect these people. She pushed her consciousness deeper into the Keth ship's systems, even though each effort sent waves of agony through her skull. The escape pods were launching one by one, carrying colonists away from the battle. But the process was too slow. At this rate, hundreds of people would still be trapped when her power finally failed. Boram's voice crackled through her communicator. Ha-Young, we are monitoring the escape pods from down here. About half the prisoners have gotten out, but the Keth are starting to organize resistance. Ha-Young looked around the prison hold. Commander Vex Thule was rallying his remaining soldiers, and more Keth troops were arriving from other parts of the ship. Soon they would overwhelm the escaping colonists through sheer numbers. She needed a new strategy, something that would save everyone without depending on her failing abilities. An idea formed in her mind. It was dangerous and would probably kill her, but it might work. Instead of fighting the nullification field, she would embrace it completely. Let it burn away her psychic abilities while using that energy to do one final, massive thing. She would turn the Keth ship's own weapons against the other two warships in their fleet. Ha-Young reached out with the last of her power toward the command ship's main computer. The system was heavily encrypted, but she had spent 15 years working with similar technology. She understood how machines thought. The computer's security programs tried to stop her, but she tore through them like a knife through cloth. Deep inside the ship's brain, she found the weapon control systems. The Keth command ship had enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Plasma cannons that could melt through starship armor, missile launchers loaded with antimatter warheads, energy beams that could cut a vessel in half. All of it was about to be turned against its own fleet. Commander Vex Thule realized what she was doing too late. Stop her. She is taking control of our weapons. His soldiers raised their electrical weapons, but Ha-Young was beyond caring about pain now. The nullification field had burned away so much of her mind that ordinary suffering felt like a gentle breeze. The command ship's main guns swiveled to target the other Keth vessels. Targeting computers locked onto weak points in their armor. Missile tubes opened and prepared to fire. This is impossible, Vex Thule whispered. No organic mind can process that much data simultaneously. You are right, Ha-Young said, blood trickling from her nose and ears. But I am not just organic anymore. The neural implants that had given her psychic abilities were burning out one by one. But as they died, they were uploading their stored information directly into the ship's computer systems. Ha-Young was becoming part of the machine, merging her consciousness with electronic circuits and processing cores. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like coming home. The command ship opened fire on its sister vessels. Plasma beams and antimatter missiles struck the other Keith warships before they could raise their shields. One ship exploded immediately in a ball of white fire. The second began spinning out of control, its engines dead. The surviving Keth on the command ship abandoned their positions and ran for their own escape pods. Even Commander Vex Thule retreated, though he stopped at the doorway to look back at Ha-Young. "What are you?" he asked. Ha-Young smiled, though her face was pale and drawn from the strain. "I am what you made me." A human pushed too far. The last of the human prisoners launched in escape pods just as the Terran fleet moved in to capture the crippled command ship. Ha-Young could sense Admiral Lee boarding with a team of Marines and medical personnel. But she could also feel her consciousness fragmenting. Parts of her mind were now scattered throughout the ship's computer systems. Other parts were simply gone, burned away by the nullification field. When Admiral Lee found her in the prison hold, she was sitting on the floor with her back against a broken cage. Her eyes were closed and she was breathing slowly. "Ha-Young," he said, kneeling beside her. "Can you hear me?" She opened her eyes. They were no longer glowing with psychic energy. They looked completely normal except for the deep exhaustion in them. "Hello, Admiral," she said quietly. "I think I am dying. Our medical team can help you. The damage from the nullification field can be repaired." Ha-Young shook her head. "No, the implants are gone. Burned out completely. Without them, I am just a normal person." Admiral Lee looked around at the destroyed Keth ship, the rescued prisoners, the defeated alien fleet. "Normal people do not do things like this." "Maybe that is the point," Ha-Young said. "Maybe being normal is enough." She closed her eyes and let the darkness take her. 6 months later, Ha-Young Kim stood in the rebuilt central plaza of New Seoul Colony, watching children play under the artificial stars. The colony looked different now, stronger. The buildings had been repaired with better materials, and new defense systems protected the settlement from future attacks. But the biggest change was in the people themselves. Ha-Young, "The evening class is ready," Boram Choi said, walking up with a tablet in her hands. She wore the uniform of the colony's new security chief, a position created after the Keth attack. Ha-Young nodded and followed Boram to the community center. Inside, 12 colonists sat in a circle, their faces focused and serious. They ranged in age from 16 to 60, and they all shared one thing in common. They had developed psychic abilities after the battle 6 months ago. During Ha-Young's final psychic explosion on the Keth command ship, traces of her power had somehow transferred to other humans, not the overwhelming abilities she had once possessed, but something smaller and more manageable. Young Minho Park, Dong-Ho's son, could sense electrical problems in machines before they happened. Elder Jiwoo Lee could feel people's emotions and help calm them during difficult times. Teenage Soo-Jin Han could move small objects with her mind. None of them were powerful enough to destroy warships or read minds across space, but together they were helping to build something new. "Good evening, everyone," Ha-Young said, taking her place in the circle. "Tonight we are going to practice shielding techniques. Remember, your abilities should serve you, not control you." The lesson went well. These new psychics were learning to use their gifts responsibly, understanding that power without wisdom was dangerous. Ha-Young had made sure to teach them the lessons she had learned the hard way. After class, she walked with Boram through the quiet streets of the colony. "Any word from Earth Command?" Boram asked. "Admiral Lee sent another message yesterday. They want me to return and help train other psychics for the military." "What did you tell him?" Ha-Young smiled. "The same thing I have told him every month for the past 6 months, no." The truth was, Ha-Young no longer had the kind of power that Earth Command wanted. The nullification field had burned away her neural implants completely. She could no longer reach into other minds or control electronic systems with her thoughts, but she had discovered something more valuable than raw psychic strength. She had found her purpose. "Director Kim," a voice called from behind them. They turned to see Dong-Ho Park approaching with a worried expression. "We have a problem at the outer mining station." Ha Young was now the director of colony defense, a position the residents had created specifically for her. She no longer hid in maintenance tunnels or avoided crowds. The people of New Seoul had made it clear that they wanted her to be part of their community openly. "What kind of problem?" she asked. "Equipment failures. The mining robots have been acting strangely for 3 days. Some of them just stop working. Others start digging in the wrong places." Ha Young frowned. "That sounded familiar. Have you checked for electromagnetic interference?" "That was my first thought. But all the readings are normal." "I will take a look tomorrow morning," Ha Young said. "Probably just worn-out circuits." But as they walked toward her apartment, she noticed something odd. The streetlights were flickering slightly, and her wrist communicator was picking up strange static. Electromagnetic disturbances. Just like the ones that had preceded the Keth attack. That night, Ha Young sat in her apartment and stared out at the stars. 6 months ago, she would have been terrified by the possibility of another alien threat. She would have considered running away to hide somewhere new. Now the thought barely worried her. The colony was no longer defenseless. The orbital defense platforms that Admiral Lee had left behind could handle most threats. The colonists themselves had organized militias and emergency response teams, and the 12 new psychics provided early warning capabilities that no enemy would expect. More importantly, Ha Young was no longer alone. A soft knock came at her door. She opened it to find Soo-Jin Han, the youngest of the new psychics. The girl looked nervous. "Director Kim, I'm sorry to bother you so late, but I've been having strange dreams for the past 3 nights." Ha Young invited her inside and made tea. Soo-Jin was only 17, but her psychic abilities were some of the strongest in the group. "Tell me about these dreams," Ha Young said. "I see ships in space, not Keth vessels. These are different, sleeker, and the beings inside them are not hostile. They seem curious about us." Ha Young set down her teacup. "How do you know they are not hostile?" "I can feel their emotions in the dream. They are not angry or hungry like the Keth were. They feel more like scientists studying something interesting. First contact with a peaceful alien race. It was something humanity had dreamed about for centuries." "Have you told anyone else about these dreams?" Soo-Jin shook her head. "I wanted to talk to you first." "What do you think it means?" Ha Young looked out the window at the stars again. Somewhere out there, other intelligences were watching humanity. Some, like the Keth, saw humans as prey or resources to be exploited, but others might see them as potential friends or allies. "I think it means we are going to have visitors soon," she said, "and this time, we will be ready for them." The next morning, Ha Young called together all 12 of the new psychics for an emergency meeting. She also invited Boram, Dong Ho, and Administrator Yoon. "We may have another first contact situation developing," she announced, "but this time, things will be different." She explained Soo-Jin's dreams and the strange equipment failures at the mining station. The evidence suggested that unknown aliens were studying the colony from a distance. "What do we do?" Administrator Yoon asked nervously. The attack 6 months ago had left him much more cautious about alien contact. "We prepare," Ha Young said, "but not for war. We prepare for communication." Over the next 2 weeks, the colony worked together to send a message to their mysterious watchers. The new psychics combined their abilities to project thoughts of peace and welcome into space. The engineers modified communication arrays to broadcast on frequencies that might be detectable to alien technology. Most importantly, they made sure the message was unmistakably human. The response came 3 days later. A single sleek ship appeared in orbit around New Seoul Colony. It made no aggressive moves and responded to communication attempts with mathematical sequences that showed intelligence. Ha Young stood in the colony's new communication center, surrounded by friends and colleagues who had once known her only as a quiet maintenance worker. "This is Director Ha Young Kim of New Seoul Colony," she said into the communication array. "Welcome to our system. We come in peace." The reply came in accented but understandable human language. "Greetings, Director Kim. We are the Vran Exploratory Council. We have been studying your species since your battle with the Keth Empire. You have shown remarkable growth in a short time." Ha Young smiled. 6 months ago, she had been hiding in shadows, afraid of her own power and terrified that her past would destroy the quiet life she had built. Now she stood in the light, surrounded by people who trusted her to help guide their future. She was no longer the most powerful human in the galaxy, but she had found something better. She had found her home.